Welcome to another video with Business with Professor T. Today's topic is an interesting topic where two phenomenal individuals are going to be dissecting and unraveling their perspective on what the glass ceiling means to them and ways to combat it. Sit back, get your notepad, get your pen, take notes and enjoy.
Hi everyone. So today I am blessed to be speaking with my dear friend Elisha, and we've actually been asked by Professor T to talk about the glass ceiling. And before we get into that, Elisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, so I'm a third year economics student at Coventry University and I run my own business. So I do economics tuition and I've written a book. It was a sellout first, now we're on Amazon and it's called The Ultimate Guide to Economic Diagrams. So if you're struggling with A-level diagrams, go and check that out. And I run a graduate employment service as well. So I deal with CVs, cover letters, interviews, the whole shebang basically. And the whole aim of that is to get people from underrepresented backgrounds into the positions of change, of thought, and to just create more diversity in these different areas. So that's the aim of what I do.
Well, I never. Not much at all, is it? It's not really that.
No, just a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I'm a final year student studying politics and international relations at University of Sheffield, and I suppose we have really similar interests in terms of wanting to make sure that underrepresented groups, especially ones that we can see ourselves in, are able to overcome, alleviate the barriers that there are when it comes to, I guess, employment. And so, yeah, let's get right into it and leads us smoothly into what the glass ceiling actually is. Can I give the definition? The Wikipedia one then. So it's a metaphor used to represent an invisible barrier that prevents a given demographic, typically applied to minorities, from rising beyond a certain level in a hierarchy. And so it was coined by feminists, so often associated with high achieving women. So how would you describe it in terms of your own personal experience?
I think I would definitely agree with that. And coming from a professional financial background, so I've done a lot of work within, hedge funds, I've worked in KPMG, I've worked in financial advisory firm, and I've been in lots of different workplaces, lots of different conferences. And I do think that that is definitely a big thing. Like I've never seen, females leading any of these conferences to start with, and then especially Indian females leading any of these things, being in any positions. I've been in a lot of workplaces and I have, very often been the only, Indian girl in the workplace. And again, working in the public sector as well, I haven't really found there to be much difference. I worked for DFE and it was the same sort of thing again. And I think that just makes it seem as though you're never going to get to those types of positions because there is never someone there in them to show you that it can be done. And I feel like when I have been going to work in these different environments, it hasn't felt like I'm just going to work. I feel like I'm breaking a barrier every day. So what about yourself, Sav?
I think you're right. And it is very, how we can both relate to our times working in the public sector as well. I can't explain how much of an impact it had having a black female line manager. And so explaining certain things to her and like her saying to me, oh, I need to get my hair done that day, stuff like that was quite funny in that comfort that it brings, but it's not common at all. And so that was like really an unusual experience, but also a nice one, because I hope that I could do that for somebody else who didn't feel like they saw themselves in certain positions. But I think for the most part, we are really talking about those positions where the decisions are being made, effective changes, and essentially it can even relate back to a primary school level where it was hard to see yourself in what you were learning. And it really starts from then what children think that they have the capacity to do if they don't see themselves in what they're studying and therefore what they want to do later on in life. But I really think that the glass ceiling presents itself in different ways, but mostly employment from what we were talking about.
Yeah, definitely. So what
Should
do
we-
you think this glass ceiling, what do you think it actually affects, and how do you think it presents itself?
I think that the conversation tends to be around either two options, and so the glass ceiling being this physical barrier or this mere feeling that can be overcome in various ways. But I think that it is definitely a bit of both from our own like conversations beyond this. And I mean, physically, what would you say you've experienced in terms of like this actual barrier?
I would say, the physical thing would be like being in, say, financial advisory, and after, lots of research being done, there's like less than like 3% of there to be like BAME female advisors. So like it's massive minority, and just seeing that in the positions which I want to go into and the things I want to achieve, it does feel like a physical barrier, because if it wasn't, then there would be more female advisors, and if there are more female advisors, them to be of an ethnic minority and them to be in managerial positions within the firm, or massive profit generators of the firm, because I tend to see women in the reception sort of jobs, so taking calls, organizing diaries, and just doing the washing up basically at the firm.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely not something that I see myself doing in the future, and I want to be that sort of face of the change, and I want to talk to different types of clients, which I do definitely think I can relate to. And I think that that's what I've seen in terms of a physical barrier within the financial sector. Yourself?
Yeah, I think that I can agree with that as well. And it's definitely, we kind of spoke about it briefly, that feeling of, is it imposter syndrome that you would say, where you kind of feel like you shouldn't be there, even though you do have the capacity to be there, and reminding yourself that you're an asset. I mean, we'll get onto that later, how you actually overcome these feelings. But as an individual, we can see how the impact it has on whether you feel like you can actually progress. And then it's obviously not just an individualistic problem, otherwise we wouldn't have vast communities and demographics recognizing the same issue with not being able to get in. There's so many sociological, historical reasons we could get into as to why, but in terms of actually right now, I think that even we look at how it affects us and community groups, but further to that, it's actually not beneficial for companies to not be purposely diverse, because actual companies that have more diverse workforces are more likely to be profitable and successful, because with diversity of thought comes diversity of background, and with that, whether people like talking about it explicitly or not, is your race, your gender, even your class, because even though this is a traditionally feminist idea and we can relate from our own backgrounds, even being from different cultural backgrounds, different class backgrounds, where even the feeling of the building feels, the architecture feels like you shouldn't be there. And it's two Brummy girls as well, and the spaces that we find ourselves in, it is very much having to assert yourself. I mean, we'll get onto that now. How do we actually overcome, yes, this feeling, but also the physical barrier that we were talking about? Like, let's go from feelings first, like how you feel as an individual.
I think it comes from mindset. I think having that sort of strong mindset and a good like group of people or connections around you that help empower you and make you feel as though, you are in the right place. And I think having that network comes from having like-minded people around you. So people who, want to achieve and want to break barriers and really don't frankly care about fitting into any sort of, pocket that they think that they should be in, or they are scared of disrupting someone's peace. So I think those types of people are good people to be around. I think that definitely helps with, the feeling. And I think making sure that you are actually good at what you're going to do, I think helps as well. I think when you can produce when you can produce the work and the results which are required of you, I think that just just has that massive effect, that positive effect on yourself, and gives you that
Mm.
motivation that, yeah, I can create this airtight case that no one can pick anything up against me to say that it's because of this reason, or this reason that you shouldn't be in this position. If you feel good in the work you're doing, then you'll naturally present yourself a lot more confidently and be very sure that no one can pick anything against you, and you will be the best candidate regardless of anything. So yeah. What about yourself? What do you think the sort of breaking down physical barriers would be?
We can say so many ideas, and then it's about whether they actually are implemented where they need to be, because there's always these half-hearted efforts sometimes. And so I think we've both encountered, for example, the BAME inclusions officer who's usually a woman, because it just gets a white woman, because it gets shoved under women's rights, for example. And then there's a lot of men who are struggling with, not necessarily, I don't like to call it a struggle, but have that extra dimension of the race or the class background that they're coming from, that makes it more difficult. And then you can't relate to this woman necessarily. Plus, it's different. The way these things intersect makes it a bit more different. So for example, first step, maybe have someone who's actually from a BME background who's in that role, so it can be a bit more effective. I think that even simple things like making the workplace environment feel a bit more inclusive, and I know that's a buzzword, but ensuring that people actually feel welcomed and see themselves as necessary in being, and obviously that comes with the mindset thing that you're just talking about, but actually as being a valid asset and wanted. And I think that really comes with the wider concept of making sure that people are aware of these opportunities, and so better advertising, more accessible routes. For example, there are a lot of schemes out there, but a lot of people don't know about them, even when it comes to just working like on that internship, government internship, and finding out about all these opportunities for young people, and then finding out they're only like implementing them in certain places where, I'm not saying they're not needed as much, but there's so many disadvantaged areas, deprived areas that actually need to hear about these opportunities. And I think a lot of that, we can talk about this on a wider scale, but as individuals, as people who are trying to get into these positions, or I'd say even for you already there, it's like we have to make sure we are not just talking the talk, and actually make sure we make ourselves seen, that heard, and so that other people can feel through seeing us that, oh, I can do that too, and therefore hopefully alleviating these barriers that we're discussing. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you'd want to add?
I'd just say, like, I agree with everything you just said there about the, especially the last point of being, you're not just kicking that ladder down now, you've climbed that, to this position that you want to be. Yeah, you don't want to kick that down and think, okay, screw everybody else behind me, because the whole point of you being there is to lift everybody else up with you.
Work hard, work hard. Yeah. Hard work is true, but to ignore these barriers that exist as if they're not needing to be jumped over is to be insane to me.
Yeah.
Because you can't get there if you're not going to even recognize what the journey looks like.
Definitely. And I think, like, my personal experience, like working in DFE, like I said, I felt, there wasn't very many, ethnic minority females. There was not really very many at all in my division. And I think,
where I think like education system needs it most.
Yes. And I think when, I was there and I was a placement student, but I didn't let that stop me from speaking to, the ministers, to the, the top grade division managers, and saying to them, look, this isn't right. And, we need to start within our teams first, and then we can start implementing this into the policy side and it to be into schools. And, I made a structural change whilst I was there as a placement student. You can't think that you won't be able to do it just because of the grade you've come in at, because, now once a week there's a discussion in team meetings that's mandatory, that you have to talk about, a BAME topic, and it either be a history topic, a topic that's going on in the news or something, to just develop, awareness, and then hopefully that spreads through the rest of the division. So it started within my team, and hopefully that's going to spread out and keep going. And I made that change whilst I was there, just as a placement student. And it's important that you don't just talk about these things on an Instagram live and that for it to just be done, and that people listening just listen to it and think, oh, that's true, and then that's it stops there. And they'll go to your workplace and look at it and evaluate it and think, is this actually a place that's inclusive for people like me and other people coming into it, yes or no? And 9 times out of 10 the answer is probably, if you're from an ethnic minority or from a minority group, it's no. So what change are you going to make now to make it better for somebody else? Yeah, so I think it's important.
So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that those who are watching, that thank you for staying with us if you've watched this far, and we wish you basically all the best. And we're both open to speak about this whenever, and I'm sure that Professor T, for even bringing up this topic, is happy to speak to anyone as well. So have a blessed day, guys. Thanks, Elisha. See you
Guys, bye.